Well, the police department averted a P320 disaster. Today I'm going to tell you exactly what this PD decided to do and which pistol they decided to switch to, which is actually becoming one of the more popular options now for a lot of police departments that are switching over from the P320. Now, if you want to know my opinion on what Sig can actually do to fix the P320 and why they refuse to fix the P320, really, I did a video about a week ago. I'll let that stand on its own. Today I want to talk about what's hurting them the most when it comes to this situation. And of course the pistol that's kind of taken over for the P320 for a lot of these PDs. Now, before we get into it, I'd love to hear your opinion. What do you think, given that you actually believe there's an issue with the P320, what do you think the best option is for a pistol for police departments? Do you think they should just stick with Glock, or do you think they should go with the option that this police department went with, or something else entirely? Let me know down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So a police department in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania took some preemptive action to get rid of the P320, and they decided to go with, I want to hear some guesses down below. If you haven't read this story, what do you actually think they decided to go with? Before we get to that though, and gives you time to leave your guesses, let's just talk about the P320 briefly. You guys, if you're in the know, you already know what the issues have been. You have 100 different cases of unintentional discharges, most of which have been thrown out. There's been 2 successful lawsuits. There's still 80 that are pending. And of course, a military vet recently lost his life to the M18, which is the military version of the P320. That was the first time it's ever happened in the military. So up until now, it's been people at the range, mainly officers, things like that. Now there are some videos out there that look like the officer actually put their finger on the trigger, or maybe something happened with a holster or whatever. And then there's others where you're like, that thing looked like it just went off. And let's just be honest, some guns work better in other holsters, but if you have a good holster for the gun that it's intended for, you should never have to worry about that gun going off. I've heard a lot about holsters through this whole fiasco. I know y'all have too, but it's like, if you have the holster for that said gun, you shouldn't have to worry about anything other than that, unless something just accidentally falls inside of that holster, causing the trigger to go off. That could happen, but at the end of the day, you have a bunch of issues out there, or a bunch of claims with the P320. Most have been unsuccessful, but some have. So this police department preemptively said, hey, let's take, I think it was $12,500 out of a parking fund they had, and let's go ahead and replace them with the FN 509. That is this gun right here. Now, if you don't know, if you're not familiar with my channel, that's fine, but I am a huge fan of FN. I haven't always been the biggest fan of their striker-fired pistols, to be totally honest with you. They make the FN 502, which is one of the best 22s, in my opinion, on the planet. They make, of course, the SCAR, one of the best rifle platforms on the planet. I have my issues with it, but it's still just absolutely fantastic. The FNX 45 Tactical. Keep this one on the wall behind me. It's a 15 round 45, and they look so freaking awesome. And you know, as much as people may not want to admit it, there is a certain lure to having military backed firearms. And there's nothing wrong with guns that aren't military backed, especially the US military, right? So if you say, hey, I'm carrying a SR9C, fine gun, or Taurus G3 or G2C or whatever. It's like, hey, that's a decent budget option. But there's something about having guns that are proven in a military setting that attract regular consumers as well. And interestingly, both of these kind of come from military trials. This one, of course, for a new 45 platform, which wasn't officially adopted, but is used by some special force units, you know, and things like that. And then, of course, this one, when the military wanted a new pistol, this was one of the entries. And of course, FN did not win that contract. Sig ended up winning. But this is increasingly becoming a very popular option for police departments that are getting rid of their P320s. It's used in some special occasions, right? There are some units that might field these, training, things like that, but it's not, neither one is officially adopted. Of course, you have the SCAR, which was adopted in limited numbers with SOCOM. So FN, of course, has a strong military backing, but their pistols have never quite caught on to be like standard use. They're more of like niche use, but make no mistake about it, FN builds one of the toughest guns on the planet. Plus they make guns right here in South Carolina, which is just freaking awesome. So it's like one of those guns that's more commercialized than anything, but they are absolutely trusted by probably millions of people now at this point, and they have been for a really long time. They're super iconic in more ways than just their pistols. But here's why police departments are gravitating towards this as opposed to something like a Glock or even a Smith & Wesson, and I think I just kind of touched on that. They build high quality guns that you can trust, that shoot well, that have all the capabilities of the P320 except for one important thing: no drama, no unintentional discharges, no lawsuits. They just build high quality guns. Boom. Period. That's it. Guns that you can trust. Now, this design specifically, like I said, it's not my favorite gun on the planet, don't get me wrong, but it uses like a hinged design trigger, very similar to what Smith & Wesson used to use in their M&P lineup. Front and rear slide serrations, of course the FN509, coming from the military trials, adopted a bunch of different things, threaded barrel, you got the high night sights, of course it is optics ready, ambidextrous controls, magazine release, and slide stop. You have the swappable back straps, and of course a really aggressive grip, so no matter what the environment is, sand, dirt, mud, whatever, this thing can handle it all. By the way, 17 round mags as well. And here's the thing, you're talking about a relatively small police department. They didn't wait for a lawsuit, an unintentional discharge. They chose not only the cost to replace the P320 with physical money, but also they chose it on a morality basis too. They don't want their people to get hurt. I mean, imagine carrying a gun that you cannot fully trust. Now look, I've been a huge defender of the P320 for a really long time, and I continue to defend it all the way up until last year because, again, we saw that most of these lawsuits and stuff had been thrown out. There was a couple where some people won, but you can't wait and hope any longer, right? And I've always said that YouTube is kind of a ongoing story, right? Things change, and if I sit up here and continue to defend a gun that I believe on some level has an inherently flawed design, not only would that just be silly of me and kind of ignorant, but it would be immoral to do that for me as well. Right? I have a responsibility to give you the best information that I think is available. And I think the vast majority of P320s are safe. But I think there's something in the design, again, I touch more on that in another video, but I just think there's something in the design that SIG has to address. Here's the problem with SIG though. It's the silence. Now they'll make some statements here and there, but it's the refusal to back down. Now I don't work for SIG, right? I don't have to make those decisions, but what I know is that them backtracking would most certainly cost them a lot of money. That's just a guess, but I believe that it absolutely would. It could cost them a military contract, tens of millions of dollars. Could cost pride and loss of trust in the company, but that's already happening. So you already have one of these things that's currently going on. Here's the question though. On a moral basis, how many more incidences, legitimate or not, do we have to have before SIG just says, okay, enough is enough. We need to change something with this design and acknowledge it. The silence is truly deafening in this case, and that's why you see so many police departments, LAPD, Waynesburg, and others switching P320 to something else, whether it's the FN509, Glock, Smith & Wesson, whatever they may be. Maybe even another SIG. I still like the P320. It's still one of my favorite pistols, but at the end of the day, something on some level, in my opinion, is wrong with that design, and they need to address it before the next incident happens. Because at the end of the day, it may cost them more than just millions of dollars and military contracts. I promise you, again, in my opinion, if they don't address it at some point, it's gonna cost them way more than money. That's just my opinion though. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think about this case specifically, and what do you think the best pistol option is for police departments to go to so they can be confident in their service weapons. They have a hard enough job. They need to be confident in their sidearm. Let me know what you think the best option for police departments is. Leave that down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one, and as always, hold them down.